"No, I swear I'm innocent." Donna Ilara's choked cry from an elderly woman with silver hair and tear-filled eyes echoed in the sepulchral silence of the courtroom. The young judge, Dr. Sophia, gavel suspended in the air, felt the weight of the world in her hands, about to condemn a life based on seemingly irrefutable evidence. But before the sentence could be pronounced, a shadow took flight. A cunning-eyed raven burst through the window, landing on the defendant's bench with a gleaming object in its beak. And what it revealed would forever change the face of justice in that room. The gleaming object in the raven's beak captured everyone's gaze, freezing time within the courtroom. Judge Sophia, gavel still suspended in the air, felt a shiver run down her spine. Her eyes, previously focused on the coldness of the law, now fixed on the dark bird, which seemed to defy all rules of logic and decorum. The silence was so dense one could hear their own heart beating, an accelerated rhythm of disbelief and astonishment. Donna Ilara, who moments before had let out a desperate cry, now watched the scene with a mixture of confusion and a faint glimmer of something she couldn't name. Her tear-filled eyes followed the raven, which, with surprising calm, dropped the small USB device onto the defendant's bench, right beside her, and then took flight again, disappearing through the same window it had entered, leaving behind only the echo of its wings and an unanswered question. Sophia slowly lowered the gavel, the soft sound breaking the spell of silence. Her mind reeled. It was absurd, a scene worthy of a fairy tale, not a court of law. How could an animal bring evidence? Her reputation, her career, everything she had built with such effort seemed to waver before that inexplicable event. Yet, a part of her, that intuition she had been ignoring throughout the trial, whispered that this was no mere coincidence. There was something more. One of the court officers, a corpulent man named Mr. Almeida, was the first to move. Hesitantly, he approached the defendant's bench, his eyes fixed on the flash drive lying there, small and innocuous, yet laden with a colossal mystery. Donna Ilara, with trembling hands, reached out and touched the object with her fingertips, as if fearing it might disappear. Her lips moved, but no sound emerged, only a heavy sigh, a mixture of exhaustion and a nascent, still fragile hope. "Mr. Almeida," Sophia's voice echoed, firm but with a note of uncertainty. "Please retrieve the object carefully and bring it here." The officer obeyed, picking up the flash drive with a tissue, as if it were a fragile relic. The entire room followed every movement, every breath. Sophia took the device, feeling the weight of the decision that lay before her. It was against all protocols, against all legal logic she knew. But the image of Donna Ilara's resigned eyes, the feeling that something was terribly wrong, and now the appearance of that raven, all mingled in her mind. Justice could not be blind to such an unusual call. "I request a brief recess," Sophia announced, her voice now stronger, more decisive. "This court will examine the contents of this device. Let the projection equipment be prepared immediately." A murmur ran through the room, but no one dared to question it. The young judge, flash drive in hand, felt she was about to open not just a digital file, but a door to a truth that destiny, or perhaps something more, had decided to reveal. The murmur Sophia heard gave way to a silence heavy with expectation. Mr. Almeida, with agility, provided the equipment. A technician hurried to connect a projector and a retractable screen, which smoothly descended on the wall behind the defense bench. Every cable extended, every click amplified by the suspense. Sophia, flash drive still in hand, felt the cold metal against her palm, a tangible reminder of the turning point. Her eyes swept the room, observing the astonished faces. The prosecutor, Dr. Ricardo, with incredulity and disdain. The defense lawyers, now with a glimmer of cautious hope, and the audience fixed on the screen. In her mind, Judge Sophia reviewed years of study, codes, precedents. Nothing had prepared her for a messenger raven. The law was a solid edifice, built on conventional facts and evidence. But life, she realized, was more complex, woven with invisible threads of coincidence and destiny, the intuition that had bothered her since the beginning of Donna Ilara's case, the feeling that the circumstantial evidence was too perfect, now gained overwhelming weight. She had striven to maintain impartiality, but the image of the elderly woman with wounded dignity and lost eyes had become fixed in her soul. This flash drive, brought so extraordinarily, was a chance to seek a deeper truth, challenging justice itself. Donna Ilara, seated in the defendant's bench, watched Sophia with renewed intensity. The despair that had consumed her, the resignation to what seemed a sealed fate, began to give way to a spark of hope. It was a fragile hope, almost painful, for she feared it would be crushed. Her hands, previously clenched into fists, now rested open on her lap, revealing wrinkled skin. She remembered her late husband, who always said that truth, however hidden, always finds a way. Could that raven, that singular apparition, be that way? A knot formed in her throat, a mixture of relief and dread. The possibility of proving her innocence was a balm for her exhausted soul. The technician signaled that everything was ready. Sophia inserted the flash drive into the courtroom computer's USB port, feeling a chill in her stomach. The desktop image appeared on the screen, and she navigated to the folder that seemed to be the only one present. There was a single video file, named only with a date and time. With a breath no one dared to release, she double-clicked. The screen flickered, and then a grainy image began to form. It was a dark, dimly lit room, and a man's voice filled the air. It was a voice Donna Ilara recognized immediately, and her body trembled. It was the voice of her nephew Gustavo, the very one who had initiated the proceedings against her. Gustavo's voice, low and conspiratorial, spoke of final details and making sure the old woman didn't stand a chance. The prosecutor, Dr. Ricardo, who had maintained an air of superiority, visibly paled. His eyes widened, and he leaned forward, as if wanting to absorb every word, or make them disappear. The image on the screen improved slightly, revealing Gustavo seated at a table, and beside him, to everyone's shock, was Dr. Ricardo, the very prosecutor of the case, with a complicit smile on his face. The room plunged into an even deeper silence, one of pure stupefaction. Judge Sophia felt her blood run cold. Her intuition hadn't been wrong. There was a web of lies far darker than she could have imagined. The truth, brought by a raven, was beginning to unfold. Gustavo's voice, low and conspiratorial, spoke of final details and making sure the old woman didn't stand a chance. The prosecutor, Dr. Ricardo, who had maintained an air of superiority, visibly paled. His eyes widened, and he leaned forward, as if wanting to absorb every word, or make them disappear. The image on the screen improved slightly, revealing Gustavo seated at a table, and beside him, to everyone's shock, was Dr. Ricardo, the very prosecutor of the case, with a complicit smile on his face. The room plunged into an even deeper silence, one of pure stupefaction. Judge Sophia felt her blood run cold. Her intuition hadn't been wrong. There was a web of lies far darker than she could have imagined. The truth, brought by a raven, was beginning to unfold. The video continued, and the voices, previously mere whispers, now became painfully clear. Gustavo, with an expression of false concern, explained to Dr. Ricardo how he had manipulated Donna Ilara's bank documents, creating trails that would directly incriminate her. "She'll never understand these statements, Uncle Ricardo," he said with a muffled laugh. "And with age, memory fails. No one will question it." The prosecutor in turn nodded, suggesting ways to strengthen the circumstantial evidence, such as transferring funds to phantom accounts he himself would help create. disguised as the elderly woman's investments. He spoke of planting fake emails and forged testimonies, all to ensure that Donna Ilara's story, the story of a well-orchestrated fraud, was the only one heard. A muffled cry escaped Donna Ilara's throat. Her eyes, previously lost, now fixed on the screen with a searing pain. It was her own nephew, someone she had raised with love, plotting her ruin with a coldness that tore her apart. Her hands trembled uncontrollably, and silent tears streamed down her wrinkled face, not from despair, but from a profound sadness at the betrayal. Beside her, the defense lawyers exchanged glances of disbelief and relief, hope now a burning flame in their chests. Dr. Ricardo in the room was pale as a ghost. He tried to stand, stammering. "This is a setup, a farce. I demand you stop this exhibition immediately." His voice, once so authoritative, now sounded desperate and trembling. But Sophia, her gaze fixed on the screen, paid him no mind. Her mind processed the information with frightening speed. The web of lies was even more intricate than she had imagined, and the prosecutor, a man the city trusted, was the architect of the injustice. Anger, an emotion she rarely felt in court, began to bubble in her chest, mixed with deep disappointment. The recording continued, revealing Gustavo and Ricardo discussing the division of Donna Ilara's inheritance, detailing how they would split the profits from the sale of properties and investments that would be taken from her. The cynicism in their voices was palpable, and the audience, previously in silent shock, began to murmur, a growing sound of indignation. Some shook their heads in disbelief, others pointed at the prosecutor, their expressions of revulsion evident. Ricardo's reputation, built over years, crumbled before everyone's eyes. Sophia took a deep breath, seeking the calm that characterized her, but feeling her heart pound in her chest. Justice, for her, was an unshakable pillar of society, and to see someone who should defend it so deeply involved in its corruption was a painful blow. But this pain transformed into an iron determination. She would not allow such an affront to go unpunished. Her eyes, previously divided between logic and intuition, now shone with unquestionable clarity. The truth, however harsh, needed to be fully exposed. The video showed Gustavo handing a thick envelope of money to the prosecutor, an advance for his cooperation. "To ensure everything goes as planned, Dr. Ricardo," Gustavo said with a greedy smile. The prosecutor pocketed the envelope with a satisfied nod. The evidence was irrefutable. There was no longer any room for doubt. Sophia raised her hand, a gesture that silenced the murmurs in the room. "Mr. Almeida," she ordered, her voice firm and resonant, "stop the video and save the file. This material will be appended to the case records as fundamental evidence. And, Dr. Ricardo, I ask that you remain in your seat. Your actions will be duly investigated." The defeated prosecutor sank into his chair, face in hands, as the room watched, stunned, the unmasking of a farce that threatened to destroy an innocent life. Justice, indeed, was being redefined that day. The silence broken by Sophia's order was different from before. It was not one of expectation, but of profound shock, of a truth that imposed itself with overwhelming force. Mr. Almeida, with the efficiency of someone witnessing something unprecedented, saved the file and removed the flash drive while the projector turned off, plunging the screen into darkness. But the image of Gustavo's and Dr. Ricardo's faces, their conspiratorial voices, remained etched in everyone's minds. Donna Ilara, still in the defendant's bench, felt her body light, as if a burden of years had been lifted from her shoulders. The tears were now of an almost unbearable relief, but also of a bitter sadness. Her nephew, whom she loved like a son, had woven such cruelty. Her heart ached not for the accusation, but for the betrayal. She brought a trembling hand to her chest, feeling the accelerated beats, a mixture of pain and the sweet liberation of truth. Her eyes, previously dull, now reflected a faint light, the light of restored innocence. Sophia watched the prosecutor, Dr. Ricardo, who now seemed shrunken in his chair, his arrogant posture completely undone. His face, previously pale, was flushed with shame and suppressed anger. He raised his head, eyes flashing. "Your Honor cannot give credence to this. It's illicit, forged evidence. I demand this material be disregarded." His voice was a hoarse whisper, a last and desperate plea against the inevitable. Judge Sophia, however, was unmoved. Her voice, when she spoke, was the very personification of authority and justice. "Dr. Ricardo, the court has irrefutable evidence of your participation in a conspiracy to incriminate Donna Ilara and divert her inheritance. The origin of the evidence, though unusual, does not invalidate its content, which you, in your own voice and image, confirmed. Your conduct is an affront to the law you swore to uphold." She paused, allowing her words to sink in. "Mr. Almeida, call the security officers. Dr. Ricardo will be immediately detained on charges of corruption, obstruction of justice, and criminal conspiracy." A loud murmur erupted in the room. The audience, which had previously whispered, now openly expressed its indignation. Some applauded discreetly, others cast looks of contempt at the prosecutor. The dignity of the court, for a moment shaken by the scandal, was being restored by the judge's firmness. Dr. Ricardo tried to argue again, but was interrupted by the two approaching security officers. He stood up, eyes full of hatred and despair, but his resistance was futile. As he was escorted out, the room watched in silence, witnessing the downfall of a man who had abused his position. Sophia turned her gaze back to Donna Ilara, a look of compassion and respect. "Donna Ilara," she said, her voice softer but still laden with emotion, "the court recognizes your innocence. The charges against you are formally withdrawn. Your honor and reputation are restored." A collective sigh of relief filled the air. Donna Ilara, hands clasped in prayer, nodded, unable to speak, but her tear-filled eyes said everything. The judge felt a warmth in her chest. That moment, the rectification of such a cruel injustice, was what made her believe in her work, in the greater purpose of the law. "As for Gustavo, your nephew," Sophia continued, her voice hardening again, "an immediate arrest warrant will be issued. He will face charges of fraud, document forgery, and conspiracy. Justice, Donna Ilara, may have been delayed, but it never fails." The audience exchanged glances, some with tears in their eyes. That trial, which began with the shadow of disgrace over a respectable elderly woman, transformed into a testament to the power of truth. Sophia felt the responsibility of her office with renewed clarity. The law was not just a set of cold rules, but an instrument to protect the innocent and unmask the corrupt, even if the truth came flying on raven's wings. That day would be marked in the city's history, not only by the shocking revelation, but by the reaffirmation of faith in justice. The murmur in the courtroom persisted for a few moments, an echo of the disbelief and relief that filled the air. Donna Ilara, still seated, felt her legs weak, but a renewed strength began to course through her body. The tears, which before were of pain and resignation, now flowed like a river of gratitude and deep sorrow. Her innocence, a mantle she had always known belonged to her, was finally restored, but the image of Gustavo, her nephew, the boy she had watched grow up plotting her downfall, was an open wound in her heart. Family, for her, had always been a safe harbor, and Gustavo's betrayal was a harder blow than any legal accusation. She closed her eyes for a moment, searching her memories for the image of the joyful boy, trying to reconcile it with the greedy man she had seen on the screen. It was an impossible task. Sophia watched Donna Ilara, feeling a wave of emotion. That case, which seemed so clear in its circumstantial evidence, had revealed itself to be an abyss of deception. The young judge, who had always prided herself on her logic and strict adherence to the law, now confronted the reality that justice, at times, needed a push from the unexpected, from the inexplicable. The raven, the unlikely messenger, was a reminder that truth has its own paths, however winding they may be. She felt a weight lift from her own shoulders, the responsibility of condemning an innocent woman, a burden that had been consuming her, the decision to listen to her intuition, to allow the video to be shown, had been risky, but it was the only one her heart allowed. The security officers had already removed Dr. Ricardo, who continued to mutter obscenities as he was led away. The courtroom door closed behind them, sealing the corrupt prosecutor's fate. The audience, little by little, began to compose themselves, but the shock and indignation were still visible on every face. Many stood up, some to embrace Donna Ilara's defense lawyers, others to offer words of support to the elderly woman. The human connection, so evident at that moment, was a balm for the wounds opened by injustice. "Donna Ilara," Sophia called again, her voice laden with deep respect. "I would like to know if you need any support. One of the officers can accompany you if you wish." The elderly woman opened her eyes, a faint smile appearing on her lips. "No, Your Honor, I just need a moment. But I thank you immensely. You restored my faith." She made a gesture with her hand, indicating she was fine, despite her fragility. Sophia nodded, understanding. That was a moment of triumph for Donna Ilara, a rebirth after darkness. The judge knew the fight didn't end there. The arrest warrant for Gustavo would be executed, and the case against him and Ricardo would be long and complex. But the first and most important battle had been won. Truth had prevailed. She looked at her watch, realizing the day was already stretching on. "This court will recess for today," Sophia announced, her voice returning to a formal tone, but with new authority. "The next steps will be communicated. I thank everyone for their presence." As the room slowly began to empty, Sophia remained in her seat, watching Donna Ilara being gently supported by her lawyers. The image of the elderly woman, her dignity intact despite everything, would be a constant reminder for the judge. That day had changed not only Donna Ilara's destiny, but Sophia herself. She had learned that justice was not just about laws and precedents, but about the courage to look beyond the obvious, to trust intuition, and to allow truth, however unexpected its form, to come to light. Faith in justice, previously shaken, now shone brighter, fueled by the unexpected intervention of a raven and the strength of a woman who refused to be silenced. The path ahead would be challenging, but Sophia felt ready. The path ahead would be challenging, but Sophia felt ready. The courtroom was finally empty, except for Sophia and a few officers tidying up the place. The silence that now enveloped the space was heavy, different from the tense silence of the trial. It was a silence of aftermath, of naked truths and altered destinies. Sophia closed her eyes for an instant, reliving each moment. The raven, the flash drive, Gustavo's voice, Ricardo's pale face. Her mind, always so organized and logical, struggled to fit the raven's anomaly into her universe of laws and facts. But her heart knew that the truth had arrived in a way that defied all human comprehension. She rose from the bench, feeling a weariness that went beyond the physical. The responsibility of judging lives was immense, and today, that responsibility had been tested in ways she had never imagined. The image of Donna Ilara, leaving the courtroom supported but with a renewed sparkle in her eyes, was her greatest reward. Justice, she thought, was not just about punishing, but about restoring, about healing. Far from there, Donna Ilara was home, surrounded by the affection of neighbors and friends who came to console her and celebrate her innocence. The small living room, once a stage for her loneliness and despair, now echoed with voices of support. But amidst all the affection, a silent pain squeezed her chest. Gustavo's betrayal was a wound that time might never heal. She picked up an old photograph where a child Gustavo with a gap-toothed smile was on her lap. Tears streamed down again, not for the injustice she had suffered, but for the loss of a love, for the breaking of a family bond she considered unbreakable. How could such a pure heart transform into something so dark? This question tormented her more than any accusation. Sophia, back in her chambers, began to organize the documents. The phone rang. It was a colleague, Judge Romero, known for his rigidity and adherence to protocols. "Sophia, my dear, I must congratulate you on your courage," he said, but the tone was not one of pure admiration. However, the Raven incident is, shall we say, unprecedented. The press is already in a frenzy. Some are calling it a miracle, others question the validity of evidence brought in such an eccentric manner. A chill ran down Sophia's spine. It was the turning point, the new battle. She knew the truth was unquestionable, but the way it came to light challenged established norms. The credibility of the court and her own were now at stake. As a judge, she was the guardian of the law, and the law was about order, not winged mysteries. Ramiro's comment, though subtle, was a reminder that the legal world was skeptical and that her decision to accept the flash drive could be seen as a weakness, a breach of impartiality. "I understand your concerns, Ramiro," Sophia replied, her voice firm despite the pang of apprehension. "But truth at times chooses unusual paths to manifest itself, and justice cannot afford to ignore it, no matter how it arrives." She knew this would be her new defense, not just for Donna Elara, but for the very integrity of her decision. The triumph, she realized, was not just for the acquitted defendant, but for her too. She would have to face not only the criminals, but also the skepticism and rigidity of her own environment, reaffirming that faith in justice was more than rules. It was about the courage to embrace truth in all its forms. The path would be long, and the young judge felt the weight of the challenge, but also a renewed determination. The story of that raven would be told, and she would make sure its message's lesson was understood. The story of that raven would be told, and she would make sure its message's lesson was understood. Sophia remained in her chambers longer than usual, the moonlight already peeking through the windows, painting the floor silver. Judge Ramiro's words echoed in her mind, a chilling reminder of the rigidity of the legal world. She knew that truth, however clear, would face resistance when its origin defied logic. But the image of Donna Elara, the dignity of her restored innocence, was a shield against any doubt. Sophia felt a warmth in her chest, an unshakable conviction that she had acted correctly. Justice could not be blind to truth, no matter if it came in an envelope or in a raven's beak. She took a deep breath, adjusting her robe over the chair, feeling the weight of responsibility, but also the strength of her faith. Meanwhile, Donna Elara, in her modest home, felt the tight embrace of her longtime friend, Cecilia. The living room, previously silent, was now filled with warm solidarity. Neighbors and friends brought teas, cakes, and above all, words of affection. The relief was immense, a balm for her wounded soul, but the pain of Gustavo's betrayal persisted, a sharp pang in her heart. She looked at the old photograph, the innocent smile of the boy she had raised with so much love. How was it possible that greed could corrupt such a young spirit? Tears streamed down, but they were no longer of despair, but of a deep sadness for the loss of a family bond she considered sacred. Cecilia, noticing the melancholy in her friend's eyes, held her wrinkled hand. "You are strong, Elara. You always have been. And truth, my dear, always finds a way to appear. Sophia, in the silence of her chambers, knew that the legal battle against Gustavo and Ricardo would be long and arduous. The press had already begun reporting on the Raven's miracle and the prosecutor's downfall. But there were also articles questioning the validity of the evidence. She knew she would have to be more than a judge. She would have to be a defender of truth, a voice that explained the inexplicable without losing credibility. Her reputation, built with years of dedication, was now at stake. But the sparkle in her eyes, previously of weariness, was now of an iron determination. She would not allow skepticism to overshadow the light that had been brought forth. That case was a watershed moment, not only for those involved, but for the very understanding of justice. Donna Ilara, feeling the warmth of Cecilia's hand, nodded slowly. The pain of betrayal was still there, but the solidarity of friends and Judge Sophia's firmness ignited a new flame in her chest. She had been acquitted, her honor restored. Now it was time to heal the wounds and move forward. Life had given her a second chance, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, hope and human kindness could prevail. She looked at Gustavo's photograph once more, a sigh escaping her lips. There was no more anger, only a deep sadness and the certainty that justice, however painful, needed to be done. The next morning, Sophia arrived at the courthouse earlier than usual. The corridors were empty, but she felt the energy of the day beginning. A meeting was scheduled with the body of judges to discuss the incident and the implications of the Raven's evidence. She knew she would face difficult questions, suspicious glances, and pressure to conform to established protocols. But Sophia was ready. She had spent the night reviewing precedents, preparing arguments, not just legal, but moral ones too. This was not just a case. It was a lesson about the resilience of truth and justice's ability to adapt, to embrace the unexpected. She walked with firm steps towards the meeting room, her heart beating with a mixture of apprehension and unshakable conviction. Faith in justice for Sophia was a beacon, and she would do everything to ensure its light continued to guide. Sophia walked with firm steps towards the meeting room, her heart beating with a mixture of apprehension and conviction. Upon opening the door, she found a dark, oval wooden table, already occupied by the senior judges. Judge Ramiro was at the head, his expression serious, spectacles perched on the tip of his nose. The air in the room was dense, laden with formality and expectation. She greeted everyone and took her seat. Ramiro cleared his throat, breaking the silence. Judge Sophia, we appreciate your presence. We will discuss the extraordinary events of Donna Ilara's trial. More specifically, how evidence was introduced into the records. His voice was polite, but the emphasis on the word evidence was a clear questioning. Sophia took a deep breath, preparing herself. Your Excellencies, I understand the singularity. The contents of the flash drive revealed an alarming conspiracy to incriminate an innocent woman and usurp her fortune. Truth, however unusual it may have been, cannot be ignored. My decision was guided by the pursuit of justice and the protection of the integrity of the process. She looked at each of them, finding mostly skeptical glances and impassive faces. Meanwhile, at Donna Ilara's house, life was beginning to reorganize itself. The living room, previously a refuge of sadness, was now a haven of affection. Cecilia, her loyal friend, prepared chamomile tea, and the neighbor, Mr. Joaquim, fixed a leaky faucet, a gesture of silent solidarity. Donna Ilara felt the warmth of the community, but with every laugh, the image of Gustavo, her nephew, came to mind, a persistent shadow. She picked up the photograph, the boy with a gap-toothed smile. "How could you, my son?" she whispered, her voice choked. The betrayal was a heavy burden, perhaps more so than the accusation itself, Back at the courthouse, the discussion intensified. Judge Helena, known for her strict adherence to precedents, intervened. Judge Sophia, we understand the gravity of the conspiracy, but the chain of custody of the evidence, the way it appeared, this sets a dangerous precedent. How will we ensure that other messengers do not appear, compromising the seriousness of our courts? Sophia felt the pressure, but her conviction was stronger. Your Excellency, the law is a living instrument that must adapt to serve the truth. The seriousness of a court lies in its ability to discern right from wrong, even when truth presents itself in an unexpected way. To ignore the contents of that flash drive would be to condone injustice, to allow criminals to escape on a technicality while an innocent person suffered cruel consequences. Her voice gained strength, her passion for justice overflowing. What is more dangerous, a raven that brings the truth, or a system that, through rigidity, stifles and denies it? A tense silence hung in the room. Ramiro watched Sophia with new curiosity, perhaps a hint of disguised admiration. The young judge, with her unshakable faith, was challenging the foundation of their beliefs. She was not just defending her decision, she was defending the soul of justice. At Donna Ilara's house, the warm tea and gentle conversations helped to ward off melancholy. She looked at Cecilia, her eyes filled with gratitude. Judge Sophia, she was an angel. I don't know what would have become of me without her courage. Cecilia squeezed her hand. Truth always finds its way, Ilara, and good people like you deserve for it to be revealed, no matter how. Sophia, seated among the judges, knew that the battle for the acceptance of her decision would be continuous. But the image of Donna Ilara, her dignity restored, was her beacon. That case was not just about a verdict, but about redefining what it means to deliver justice. She had planted a seed of change, and now it was up to her to water it with courage and conviction, showing that faith in justice was not a weakness, but its greatest strength. The path would be long, but she was ready to walk it, whatever the cost, with the certainty that truth, however strange its arrival, would always prevail. A tense silence hung in the room. Ramiro watched Sophia with curiosity, perhaps disguised admiration. The young judge, with unshakable faith, challenged the foundation of their beliefs. She defended the soul of justice. Judge Helena, however, shook her head, her lips tight. Respectfully, Judge Sophia, justice is built on pillars of procedure. If we open precedents for celestial interventions, how do we maintain the order and predictability that the law demands? Sophia felt a chill, but did not back down. Your Excellency, order and predictability are essential, but justice is, above all, truth. The Raven brought irrefutable proof of conspiracy. To ignore this, out of blind adherence to form, would be a moral failing. The law seeks equity, and at times it demands looking beyond the conventional. She paused, her gaze sweeping across her colleagues' faces. I am not suggesting that every case be resolved by a winged messenger. I argue that in the face of clear truth and blatant injustice, our humanity and sense of justice must prevail over bureaucratic rigidity. Donna Ilara was about to be condemned. What is more damaging to credibility? Accepting unusual evidence and acquitting, or condemning her because it doesn't fit? Ramiro, with a neutral posture, leaned slightly. The question, Judge Sophia, is one of safeguard. If this precedent is established, how will we prevent the defense from attempting to introduce evidence of dubious origins, claiming interventions? With discernment, Your Excellency, Sophia replied. With the same rigorous analysis we apply to any evidence, the flash drive was forensically examined, its authenticity proven. It was not a mere allegation, but a concrete fact, brought in an extraordinary way. Our function is to protect the innocent and punish the guilty. If truth challenges us, we should not hide behind formalisms, but rather find the courage to embrace it. As the discussion unfolded, Donna Ilara, at home, sought peace. The living room was organized, fresh flowers. Cecilia had left, but the scent of chamomile lingered. She sat in the armchair, her gaze lost in the window. Her gratitude for Judge Sophia was immense, a beacon, but the emptiness of Gustavo's betrayal was a hole in her soul. She picked up the photograph, the boy's gap-toothed smile. "My Gustavo," she whispered, silent tears streaming down. "How could I not see?" The pain was one of deep sadness for the loss of who she thought he was. She knew she needed to forgive to move forward. Forgiveness was a long path. Sophia in the meeting felt the weight of the words and the lightness of her conscience. She had done the right thing, her integrity intact. The fight for justice was a journey, and she was ready. That case, with its mysterious raven, was a reminder that life and justice were full of surprises, and faith in truth was the most reliable compass. Ramiro sighed, a gesture Sophia interpreted as a sign that her words had been heard. "Very well, Judge Sophia. Your considerations are relevant. The matter will be taken to a broader council. For now, the arrest warrants and proceedings against Gustavo and Ricardo will proceed. We appreciate your firmness." Sophia nodded, a subtle relief coursing through her. The battle wasn't won, but the first round was. She knew that truth, however unusual, had a force of its own, and she would be its tireless defender. Sophia left the meeting room with her mind buzzing but her heart lighter. The subtle relief she felt was not one of complete victory, but of a deserved truce. The battle against her colleague's skepticism was far from over, but she had planted the seed of doubt, the idea that justice perhaps needed a broader perspective. She walked through the empty corridors, the echo of her own footsteps filling the silence. The late afternoon light streamed through the windows, casting long shadows. She felt the weight of her robe, not as a burden, but as a mantle of responsibility she now carried with even greater pride. Truth, she thought, was a river that always found its way, even if it had to carve new landscapes. Upon reaching her chambers, Sophia sat at her desk, the documents concerning Gustavo and Ricardo before her. The recordings from the flash drive, now transcribed and appended to the records, were irrefutable proof of their guilt. The proceedings against them would be meticulous, every detail scrutinized, but the foundation was solid. She knew the press would continue to fuel the debate about the messenger raven, and that public opinion would be divided between fascination and distrust. But the judge could not let this deter her. Her mission was to ensure that justice, in its purest form, was done. She picked up the phone and called her assistant, asking her to schedule a meeting with the team to outline the next strategies. Overcoming, she realized, was a continuous process, both for her and for Donna Ilara. Meanwhile, at Donna Ilara's house, the calm of the night brought a different kind of reflection. The living room, now in order, seemed to breathe lighter air. The fresh flowers, brought by neighbors, exuded a soft perfume, and the chamomile tea Cecilia had prepared still left a warm trace in the cup. Ilara was sitting in the armchair, no longer with a lost gaze, but with a serenity that at times was interrupted by a deep sigh. Her gratitude for Judge Sophia was immense, a beacon that had guided her through the storm. But the emptiness left by Gustavo's betrayal was a hole in her soul, a wound that time would take to heal. She picked up the old photograph again, the boy with a gap-toothed smile, eyes shining with innocence. "My Gustavo," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "How could I not see?" The pain was not of anger, but of a deep sadness for the loss of who she thought he was, for the breaking of a bond she considered unbreakable. She knew that to move forward, to find true peace, she would need to forgive. But forgiveness, she understood, was not a simple or quick act. It was a long path, full of nuances and internal confrontations. How to forgive someone who had hurt her so deeply, who had tried to destroy her life and her reputation. Ilara closed her eyes, tears silently streaming down her wrinkled face. The image of child Gustavo mingled with that of the man who had betrayed her. She remembered every moment of affection, every sacrifice she had made for him, and bitterness mingled with pain. But deep in her heart, a soft voice told her that hatred and resentment would only tie her to the past. Forgiveness would be an act of liberation for herself, not for him. It would be a gift she would give herself, allowing herself to move forward with the dignity that Judge Sophia had helped restore. Sophia, in her chambers, felt the same resilience. The night advanced, but she felt no sleepiness. There was a renewed sense of purpose in her spirit. That case, with its mysterious raven, was a constant reminder that life and justice were full of surprises, and that faith in truth was the most reliable compass. She knew the challenges were many, but the conviction of having done the right thing was an unbreakable shield. The battle for the acceptance of truth, however unusual its arrival, would continue, and Sophia was ready to lead it. She stood up, looked at the sleeping city through the window. Justice, for her, was not just a set of laws, but an ideal worth defending with all her strength and heart. The path would be long, but she was ready. The path would be long, but she was ready. The next morning, the air in the courthouse seemed denser, charged with an almost palpable expectation. Sophia had been summoned to present her report and defend her decision before the Superior Council of Magistracy, the highest body that could validate or annul her action. It was the decisive moment, not only for the validity of the Raven's evidence, but for her own career and for the integrity of the justice she so cherished. Upon entering the imposing hearing room, where the council members already awaited her, Sophia felt a chill in her stomach. But her posture was firm, her eyes shining with unshakable determination. Judge Ramiro was present, his expression indecipherable, and Judge Helena, with her severe gaze, seemed ready for any questioning. Meanwhile, at Donna Ilara's house, the morning brought a new kind of light. She had spent the night awake, reliving memories of Gustavo, from the mischievous boy who ran through the fields to the man who had betrayed her. With a heavy sigh, Ilara picked up a pen and paper. It wasn't a letter to be sent, but an outpouring, an attempt to organize the storm in her heart. "My dear Gustavo," she began to write, her handwriting trembling, "how could greed steal the purity of your heart? I loved you like a son, raised you with my whole being, and the pain of your betrayal is deeper than any accusation. But I don't hate you, I can't. The love I felt for you still lives here, mingled with sadness. And it is for that love that I need to forgive, not for you, but for myself, so that I can move forward and not carry the weight of bitterness." A tear fell, staining the ink, but a faint smile appeared on her wrinkled lips. It was a step, a giant step, towards healing. In the courtroom, Sophia began her presentation. Her voice, initially restrained, gained strength as she detailed the conspiracy, the cruelty of Gustavo and Ricardo's plan, and the irrefutability of the evidence contained in the flash drive. "Your Excellencies," she declared, her hand on the documents, "justice cannot be a static concept, imprisoned by formalisms that prevent it from serving the truth. That Raven was not a miracle, but an unexpected messenger of truth, a cry from the universe against injustice. If we ignore this truth for fear of what is unusual, we will be failing not only Donna Ilara, but the very ideal of justice." She looked directly at Ramiro, seeking a glimmer of understanding in his eyes. "The credibility of our courts is not measured by the rigidity of their rituals, but by the courage to defend what is right, no matter how it presents itself." The room remained silent. The intensity of Sophia's words hung in the air. Judge Ramiro, who had previously maintained a neutral posture, now leaned slightly, his eyes fixed on the young judge. Judge Helena, though still serious, no longer showed the same hostility. Truth, brought with such passion and conviction, began to break down the barriers of skepticism. Sophia felt that, at that instant, the fate of her decision and, perhaps, the future of the very interpretation of justice were being sealed. She had done her part, surrendered her soul to the cause. The climax was not a verdict, but the total surrender of her faith and courage, an appeal to the humanity of her peers. She took a deep breath, awaiting the answer that would define everything. The silence in the Superior Council of Magistracy's room was almost deafening, dense. Sophia felt every beat of her heart reverberate, an anxious melody that contrasted with the imposing formality of the environment. The judge's gazes, previously skeptical, now softened, transforming into respectful curiosity. Judge Ramiro, after a long moment of deliberation, finally broke the silence. His eyes, previously indecipherable, shone with unexpected recognition. "Judge Sophia," he began, his voice softer and more thoughtful, "your unshakable passion for justice and your uncompromising defense of truth, even when it presents itself in such a singular and challenging way to our protocols, have been profoundly impactful. The Council, after deliberation and meticulous analysis of the expert reports that confirmed the authenticity of the flash drive, has reached a unanimous conclusion. We cannot, out of blind adherence to form, ignore the substance of such a vile conspiracy that almost destroyed the life of an innocent woman. Therefore, Your Excellency's decision to accept the evidence, and consequently, to acquit Donna Ilara and proceed with the charges against Gustavo and Ricardo, is fully confirmed and endorsed by this council." A sigh of relief escaped Sophia's lips, almost inaudible, but profound. She felt an immense weight lifted from her shoulders, as if years of effort and dedication had finally found validation. Judge Helena, previously the personification of inflexibility, nodded slowly, a small, almost imperceptible smile appearing on her lips. "The law exists to serve justice, not the other way around," Helena murmured, a recognition that surprised Sophia and quieted her spirit. "Your courage and your faith have reminded us of this fundamental truth, Judge Sophia." Sophia felt her eyes well up, but held back the tears, allowing only a glimmer of gratitude and triumph to show through. It was a monumental victory, not only for her, but for the very ideal of justice she so cherished. That moment rewrote not only her personal story, but a small yet significant chapter in the history of jurisprudence, showing that truth, however unusual its arrival, would always find a way to prevail. She thanked the council, her voice choked with emotion and deep gratitude. The faith she had maintained, even in the face of skepticism, had been gloriously rewarded. Her path as a judge, she knew, was now firmer than ever, guided by the unbreakable compass of truth and compassion. Meanwhile, at Donna Ilara's house, the pen glided smoothly across the paper, like a boat on calm waters. The letter to Gustavo, which served as a balm for her own soul, was almost complete. "I forgive you, Gustavo," she wrote, the words flowing from the depths of her being with a painful yet liberating sincerity, "not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace. I deserve to free myself from the bitterness and resentment your betrayal planted in me. The love I felt for you, the boy I raised, cannot be erased by your mistakes. It has transformed, yes, into sadness, but not into hatred. May you find your way to truth and redemption." She folded the sheet carefully, feeling a lightness in her chest she hadn't felt in a long time, as if an invisible burden had finally been removed. It was not a forgiveness that absolved Gustavo, but a forgiveness that freed Ilara from her own pain. She stood up and walked to the window, watching the morning sun paint the sky with golden hues, promising a new day. The raven, that unexpected messenger, had brought more than a flash drive. It had brought a new chance at life, an opportunity to start anew, to heal wounds, and to reaffirm the beauty of human connection. Cecilia, her loyal friend, arrived at that instant, bringing with her a warm cornmeal cake whose sweet aroma filled the room. "Good morning, Elara. I brought a treat for our breakfast to celebrate life." Her eyes met Elara's, and Cecilia noticed the change. The melancholy that had once dwelled in her friend's gaze had been replaced by a luminous serenity and renewed hope. "Good morning, my dear," Elara replied, a genuine and radiant smile illuminating her wrinkled face. "I feel an enormous weight has been lifted from me. Judge Sophia. She is a true angel, an example of courage and integrity. And life, Cecilia. Life is a precious gift, even with all its surprises and challenges." She hugged her friend tightly, feeling the warmth of affection and the certainty that, with the unconditional support of those who loved her, she would be able to rebuild her life, one day at a time, with dignity and peace. The journey of healing was long, but Elara's heart was now at peace, ready to embrace the future with unshakable hope. The journey of healing was long, but Elara's heart was now at peace, ready to embrace the future with unshakable hope. At that very instant, in her chambers, Sophia felt the exhaustion dissipate, replaced by a deep and gratifying sense of duty fulfilled. The council's unanimous confirmation was not just a validation of her decision, but a recognition that justice, to be full and human, needed a heart open to truth, regardless of its origin or how it presented itself. She looked at the pile of documents, the case files of Gustavo and Ricardo, now with the unquestionable force of law. Justice would take its course, relentless and fair, for those who had plotted such wickedness. There was no room for hatred in her heart, only the serene firmness of one who knew that good had prevailed over the darkness of greed. The young judge knew that debates about the messenger raven would continue to echo in the corridors of courthouses and in the press, perhaps for many years, but the seed of change had been firmly planted. She had proven that unshakable faith in humanity and truth could indeed challenge the rigidity of the oldest protocols. A small, genuine smile appeared on her lips. She imagined herself, many years from now, telling this extraordinary story to her grandchildren about how a raven had taught her, and so many others, that life was full of wonderful surprises, and that the courage to defend what is right was the greatest virtue a human being could possess. Her career, she knew, would be forever marked by this case, not as a scandal, but as an inspiring landmark of renewal and faith in justice. At Elara's house, the comforting aroma of cornmeal cake and Cecilia's contagious laughter filled the air with a special sweetness. Elara felt light, as if years of worry and anguish had been swept away by a gentle breeze. She picked up the pen again, not to write words, but to doodle a simple drawing of a bird, a raven. In a corner of the paper, a symbol of her unexpected redemption. "Cecilia," she said, her voice soft and full of a new, vibrant vitality, "we need to think of something to do with the house, with the garden, perhaps a support center for the elderly, or a welcoming place for the neighborhood children to learn to read and dream." Her eyes shone with renewed and contagious enthusiasm. She didn't just want to live. She wanted to give back the immense kindness she had received, to transform pain into an altruistic and meaningful purpose. Cecilia looked at her with admiration and deep affection. "That's the Elara I know, full of life and wonderful plans." Elara smiled, a smile that reached her eyes, revealing inner peace. Gustavo's betrayal was still a scar, but no longer an open and painful wound. The forgiveness she had granted herself was the key to moving forward with dignity. She remembered Judge Sophia, her strength, her compassion. Two women from different generations and worlds, united by an invisible thread of justice and truth. The morning sun streamed through the window, bathing the room in a soft, promising golden light. It was a new beginning, not just for Ilara, but for everyone who had been touched by that extraordinary story. Truth, however much they tried to hide it, would always find its way, and faith in justice, even when tested to the limit, would always prevail. That raven, with its flash drive, had been more than a messenger. It had been a powerful reminder that, in the darkest moments, hope can emerge in the most unexpected ways, reaffirming the beauty of human connection and the transformative power of altruism. Life, with its complexities and wonders, continued, and Ilara and Sophia, each in their own way, were ready to embrace it, with hearts full of gratitude and unshakable faith in the future. Life, with its complexities and wonders, continued, and Ilara and Sophia, each in their own way, were ready to embrace it, with hearts full of gratitude and unshakable faith in the future. In the days that followed that decisive morning at the council, Sophia plunged with renewed fervor into piles of documents, meticulously preparing the indictment against Gustavo and Ricardo. Every word, every piece of evidence from the flash drive was now a solid brick in the construction of justice. She felt the heavy responsibility on her shoulders, but it was a weight that strengthened her, not crushed her. In her chambers, the afternoon sunlight bathed the desk, illuminating the papers. Her fingers glided over the transcripts of the recordings, and a faint smile appeared on her lips as she remembered that raven, such an unlikely messenger who had rewritten the rules. The judge knew that the legal path would be long and full of maneuvers, but the truth now was unquestionable. She met with her team, her eyes shining with a clarity that inspired confidence. "This case," she declared, her voice firm and serene, "is not just about punishing the guilty, but about reaffirming that justice is for everyone, and that truth, however much they try to hide it, will always find a way to come to light." Her colleagues, who had previously looked at her with skepticism, now listened with respect, some even with admiration. The seed of change, planted by her courage, was beginning to germinate in the corridors of the courthouse. Meanwhile, at Donna Ilara's house, the buzz of new ideas replaced the heavy silence from before. With Cecilia by her side and the help of some neighbors who volunteered, Ilara began to transform her garden, previously a personal refuge, into a welcoming space. She imagined colorful flower beds, wooden benches under the shade of old trees, and a small outdoor library where children could browse books and dream. Her eyes, previously lost, now shone with contagious enthusiasm. "We need more children's books, Cecilia," she said, pointing to a corner of the garden with a delicate gesture, "and perhaps a blackboard for tutoring sessions." Cecilia smiled, observing her friend with immense affection. Gustavo's betrayal was still a scar, but Ilara no longer let it define her present. Forgiveness. That act of personal liberation had opened the doors to a new purpose. She felt connected to the community in a way she had never imagined, and every smile from a neighbor, every outstretched hand, was a balm for her soul. The story of the raven and the flash drive had spread throughout the city, becoming an urban legend, a reminder that the unexpected can bring truth. For many, it was a sign of hope, a modern fairy tale that proved good always prevailed. Ilara, seeing the children playing in the garden that was beginning to bloom, felt part of something larger, a link in the chain of human kindness. She remembered Judge Sophia, her strength and compassion, and felt deep gratitude for that young woman who had dared to believe. Sophia, in her chambers, received the news that Gustavo and Ricardo would be formally indicted. A sigh of satisfaction escaped her lips. Justice was being served. She looked at the window, where a solitary raven perched on the sill, observing the city. A soft smile formed on her face. That case had changed her life, teaching her that faith in truth and the courage to defend it were the most reliable compasses. Life continued, full of new battles, but Sophia and Ilara, each in their own universe, were stronger, wiser, and with hearts open to the future.